Well, it's just about 6 o'clock. My name is Doug Morrison. I'd like to welcome you to our Weather 101 program. And with us tonight, we have Jeffrey Ziegler from the National Weather Service, who will be presenting our program. And let's give him a warm round of applause.
I wasn't expecting that. My name is Freddie Ziegler. I'm from the National Weather Service in Cleveland. I've been in the National Weather Service for almost 30 years, October 1992, 2022. I moved around a little bit. Initially started my career in Tupelo, Mississippi, birthplace of Elvis. Moved down to Amarillo, Texas. Got a little flavor with tornadoes and some high plains snow. Then I moved to Louisiana back in 1998. I'm originally from South Florida. I do have a little bit of southern drawl, but not too much. And I got into weather because I love hurricanes. And there's other factors that kind of make me really like, I really like going into work and figuring out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to connect with people like you guys. This is actually, how many of you guys have been to the National Hurricane Center site from on the computer? So this is if you actually seen this sometime, the newscast kind of put this on. This is actually a forecast from the National Hurricane Center. This is the initial, this is advisory 2, so it's pretty close to the initial advisory of Ian when it started just south of Hispaniola. It's Haiti and Dominican Republic. So just kind of in the middle of the Caribbean Sea. And so what it's showing is actually a cone. It's a cone of error. And 2/3 of the storms in the past 15 years will actually be in that cone, 1/3 will be out. 20 years ago, that cone was really big. The forecasts for hurricanes have actually become so well, I would say if that forecast came out and I was in Fort Myers and Naples, they have it as a major hurricane. So anytime you see the S's that step forward 12 hours, and then once you get beyond 3 days or 72 hours, they step forward 24 hours. So anytime you see an S, that's tropical storm. H is a hurricane, and major is a major hurricane category 3, 4, or 5. So this forecast was out at 11 o'clock on Friday. It's forecast to be near Naples, kind of south of Tampa, by 8 a.m. on Wednesday. So if you got that initial forecast, that's a pretty good forecast. Now over time, they adjust it, they move it around, but it gives you the idea of how well the forecast was initially. In the past, if we were, I worked on the Gulf Coast for 22 years. In the past, if we were in a cone, the forecast was so bad back then, like, oh, it'll shift. And most people on the Gulf Coast kind of think that. On the Atlantic, it's going to shift. This actually worked out well initially, but there should not be any surprises from that storm. And so this is kind of Doug, I don't know if you kind of played around with this. This is actually kind of an archive to see what's going on. So you can see they're updating the forecast each 12 hours or each 6 hours. You can see how they modified it, moved it back, and moved it back. If they would have stayed with the original one, it would probably been on right on. But those people in Southwest Florida knew Friday that they were going to be affected on Wednesday. That's pretty good, accurate pretty good forecast. Not spot on. They're forecasting the center of circulation, not the whole storm itself. So I think they did a pretty good job. The models kind of struggled a little bit initially, but it's not a catastrophic. This is a heavy rain and storm surge where the water just come in and sweeps in. If you're going to Disney this weekend, I'm not sure if it's going to open up. Disney don't like to close. They like to keep their their gates open, and keep people happy or make money. they like to keep their gates open. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to my presentation. Yeah, I worked for the National Weather Service, like I said, for 30 years. Our primary mission of the National Weather Service is to protect life and property through our warning process. But we do a lot of other things as well. National Weather Service is the sole official voice of issuing warnings. But like I said, we do a lot more than just issue warnings, tornado warnings, freeze warnings, frost warnings. There's a frost warning out for, I think, Erie and Crawford County in Pennsylvania. But we're the official voice, so it's not TV meteorologists, it's not something, we're the ones that actually have the warning process. And because of that, technically we can't be sued. Because nobody wants a liability. Because if they have that liability, then they can be sued. We try to do it unbiasedly, and we try to do it with the science. We're located in Cleveland, but we're under the NOAA, or National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, and it's located in the Department of Commerce. I always thought we should be maybe with the Park Service, in the Department of Interior, but that's where we are. I assume the Department of Commerce is because weather may affect commerce, flooding over the roads, and so that's why we're in there. I have 122 offices across the United States. Most offices have about 12 to 15 forecasters. Those are operational forecasters. 4 electronic technicians and ITs. Gotta keep the place running. 3 administrative meteorologists. I'm one of them. I don't know if you know Gary. Gary's my boss. He was in this position 5 years ago. Observation program leader, hydrologist, and administrative assistant. Make sure we get paid. We're open 24 hours a day. We're open on Easter, Christmas, and when I was in Louisiana, we're open on Mardi Gras. We're the ones that issued all the warnings that you see that come across your phones and come across the TV as far as the crawls. Like I said, we actually were located at the airport for almost 46 years, back in 74 to 2020. We moved to Brooklyn Heights, which is kind of the south central location of Metro Cleveland. Our responsibility area actually extends as far south as Wayne County. I believe we're a little bit further south than that. Actually go over to Holmes County, Wyandotte, up to Toledo, cover most of northeast Ohio, and of course we cover big metro areas, Akron, Cleveland, Youngstown, Erie, Pennsylvania, and Crawford. So we have 28 counties in northern Ohio and 2 counties in northwest Pennsylvania. So when I came into the Weather Service, most people were still calling it the Weather Bureau. You know, kind of like the FBI. Okay, we got the FBI, we're the Weather Bureau. How many of you guys have seen the movie Rudy? So you see Rudy? Well, anyway, there's a kind of, this is me. This is weather. Weather geeks kind of catching on to this. One of the guys, he was I guess a field operator, and he was saying, I'm going to check the forecast. I'm going to check the National Weather Service. Well, back then they were not calling it the National Weather Service. They were calling it the Weather Bureau. And I think they called it the Weather Bureau. When I came in, they were still calling it the Weather Bureau. Some people was like, I'm going to check with the Weather Bureau. We started in 1870 with 3,000 weather observers nationally. Most famous weather observer there is in the United States, in our history is Ben Franklin. He actually did a lot of observations with lightning. He did a lot of he invented a lot of stuff and never really patented it. He just gave that knowledge away. Weather Bureau in 1926, definitely that's how they used to do all the surface maps and actually do a lot of analysis. How many of you guys know the most devastating weather event in Ohio history? It's in the last 200 years. It's good. Go ahead.
Blizzard 78.
Blizzard 78. Any others? Not saying it's wrong, like,
Well, I said it was a big old snowstorm, it was great, I could stay home.
I have that. Other?
Thanksgiving 1950?
I don't have that one.
Was there?
I know we looked in here and we talked about the flood in Ohio Valley. That flooded out in 1913. It devastated the area. The blizzard's is in there. We actually have it in our, as one of our highlights as far as one of the biggest significant storm events across Ohio. World War I did not see 1917, so how many of you guys have seen 1917? So you talk about the trenches in there and the rain that's in the trenches and everything and how disgusting it was. Actually, we start getting into air warfare. Weather was not a factor in the sense that we did not have satellites or radar, but it was a factor as far as the soldiers fighting in that type of conditions. The drought did affect Ohio. The droughts of across the plains, as far as the Dust Bowl, did affect a lot of the areas. This is a picture from Mansfield, I believe, and the sky was orange. A lot of particulates in the upper parts of the atmosphere. Really, that's when this type of stuff reached the New York and DC area, then they think it's a big deal. Go ahead.
Don't they have weather like that in the Mideast quite often now? Or is that just sandstorms?
It could be sandstorms or, for the most part, but these were that topsoil that was kind of just swept away. The way they were doing the props and that ground had over 10, 15, 20,000 years to really get a natural, we were just plowing it up and then it just swept away and it was picked up in the upper parts of the atmosphere and made as far as New York and they said, okay, we gotta do something else, do something differently to protect the land. Someone asked, this question, what is the most crucial forecast in U.S. history? Anybody?
Don't even have a
You have a guess.
Tornadoes?
As far as like safety and sound forecasting, I'm gonna give an example. And this is not one of them. So, given a forecast and on a forecast for a Super Bowl. So remember the Super Bowl, Cincinnati was in Detroit and it was snow. So a forecast like that, but this
Well,
is
something like D-Day?
oh my God, see that kind of picked you up in that area. D-Day
No.
was the most important, June 6th.
Sorry.
No,
I
that's
haven't
okay,
seen
that's
this
okay.
before.
As far as affecting, I think, a lot of the generals and everything, they were looking for a day that it was moonlit and the channel was not as choppy. They were looking at, if you look back at the history and you start, I was reading up on it, they were looking at probably 3 days, they had a window, June 6th. I've got March on mine. I'm marching in, but June 6th through June 9th. And so that was the first opportunity to do it. They took that chance to do it. So I came in, this is kind of a timeline of the National Weather Service. I came in 1993. By that time, they had already installed a new type of radar. In World War II, they were using radar to detect planes. And a lot of times, a lot of discoveries are you kind of look, this weather is in the way. Why is it in the way? Well, okay, we can use this, we can detect storms with this. And so that's what they found out. They can actually detect weather precipitation by radar. In the late 50s, early 60s, and this has been around from a German scientist, Doppler, and what he found out is, especially if you're waiting at a train, you can hear the high pitch as a train is approaching, and a low pitch as it's moving away. The same principles of the Doppler radar uses the same principles. So if a particle is moving towards the radar, it comes back faster. The signal will come back faster. If it's moving away from the radar, it comes back slower. And so they have been working on this probably in the 70s and 80s. And finally, we're able to install these radars all across the country in the mid-90s, just when I came in. It was a generational changer. We were able to detect these strong tornadoes with pretty good accuracy and also with warnings. I mean, before it was just the old statement, well, we got a hook echo, but a lot of times we didn't know if it was a very tight circulation there, and we could tell with the radar we could do that. But if you look at here, if you look through history, just looking at some of the days here, Hurricane Warning Service, we had a big hurricane in the Keys in 1935. That kicked it off. So it's always an event that kicks off the first warning. 1947, first tornado warning, and it was a big time tornado that was actually, that affected Toledo to Cleveland, that we issued our first warning here. And if you go to the Case Western University, you type in Case Western University tornado, I think I may have it on the link there to talk about it. They talk about the first link. They actually, the TV went on and they talked about the tornado warning. There's some actual pictures where the tornado was dissipating in Lorain, I think in Lorain County, the western portion of Cuyahoga County. So they actually talk about that. Satellites. It takes someone else to put a satellite in the air, and then we get, we come to the race and we put one up in there. We didn't have satellite until early 60s. Sputnik was 58, 57, I'm not sure. It's late 50s. So you can see different things kind of occurring as a timeline, as you kind of move down the timeline, different advances that actually makes it a lot easier to forecast, a lot easier to detect. Definitely, we're still putting up satellites. Right now, the satellites are so detailed, they can see traffic.
When you still call them GOES?
Yeah, we still call them geostationary. They stay in one spot. Sometimes they shift it a little bit. Depending on hurricane season, it's over the eastern kind of the Atlantic. And they'll shift it back to cover most of the United States. But yeah, they still do that. Storm rating program started in 2000. Big tornado that hit Fort Smith, Arkansas. The National Weather Service did everything right, but did everything wrong. We did not communicate with the public in a way that we can use tools to reach out to emergency managers. And so when we start talking to emergency managers, hey, you need different ways of communicating. And back then, that was, that's 20 years ago, there was probably 2 or 3 ways. Now there are different ways. There's so many social media and all. It's a lot of ways to communicate. Our organization was completed in 2000. I think I was 10 years in, maybe 8 years in. But you can see the timeline here, definitely the history of different things. We go from one radar in the 40s, then 57. Actually, was trained on the 57, raw data. So you see different things. First film, first cloud image on a weather satellite in 1963. So the modernization, this is kind of old, this is from the 70s and what it looks like in the 90s, and that's kind of what it looks like now, but it's a little bit more detailed than that. This computation that we learn in school, we cannot do it on the desk. That computer does that. We have different models that look at different things and kind of give us a consensus of what it thinks is going to happen.
So those early 1900s guys that was back there in that weather bureau office that you showed, were busy trying to do.
Yeah, they were busy sometimes doing some computation. I've seen some older forecasters bring their textbook to work. I don't bring a textbook, but they will bring the textbook to work. By the time they figured it out, it already happened. I'm being honest. By the time this was going on, sometimes even early in my career, when the forecast came out, you hear some of the TV meteorologists talk about the models say this or this model saying this. Some of those models were not coming out until 2 o'clock when we were able to work on a forecast. Now, we're able to look at those same models with better resolution at 10 o'clock rather than at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is pictures of radar to the top left. Those will be compared with the Doppler radar image on the top left and under the 90s. We don't have a satellite, that's a satellite from the old satellite. Those are tapes in the background. These are the Cray computer, but the computation is much faster even now. So I'm going to talk about severe weather and how we look at it. And actually, this, I guess, upside down triangle is the same way we look at all weather. Hurricanes, snow, it's all the same. We look at it from a big picture and we narrow it down. So days out, we're looking at an outlook. We may be looking with the Storm Prediction Center on the right-hand side. National hazardous weather outlooks, we communicate with the emergency managers that way. We kind of give them an idea of what's going on, if there are going to be any impacts. I do a weekly briefing with the emergency managers, kind of talk about the main points. We don't want to talk about maybe the weekend there's no impacts, but we talk about the main points. The lake effect showers that we have, the flooding that we have, the possible frost that we may have in Geauga and Crawford. So we talk about the main points that may be an issue. As we get closer down and actually closer to the event, we'll talk about maybe a possibility of a severe thunderstorm watch, a tornado watch that's issued by national centers, and a flash flood watch that's issued by our office. Could be winter storm watch. Kind of the same deal, except we're looking at different types of weather. Minutes, fast fuse storms, those are fast fuse type warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings, flash flood warnings. I need to put up here snow squall warnings. Those are ideas when you're actually driving out on the interstate and the visibility goes from 6 to half a mile to a quarter of a mile. That can be very dangerous. These are all short views. They last for about 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. Tornado warnings will trigger your phones, just like the Amber Alert we had a couple of days ago, about a week ago now. But minutes matter. Those are the times when you need to take shelter. Snow squall warnings, you need to slow down or get off the interstate. Makes a difference to save lives. That's all we're trying to do, is save lives. As far as thunderstorms day, I grew up in Florida and I thought thunderstorms happen all the time in the summertime. The thunderstorm capital is Florida, and actually just, if you've ever been to Orlando or Disney, if it rains, it will stop soon. There are a lot of thunderstorms along the Gulf Coast. Here across, you can see the light blue. We average about, this is kind of the thunderstorm days. We average between 18 to 27, 36 to 45. About 30, 45 across northern and central Ohio. Sounds about right. I was talking to my mother-in-law, she lives in Michigan, and she said by September it's all gone. We don't have any thunderstorms after that. She's been living there for about 40 years. As far as the average annual number of tornadoes, the state of Ohio averages around 19 to 20. It says 22, but it's actually 19 or 20. It's around 20. In northern Ohio, it's a little bit less. It's around 6 a year. Texas always get the most, but per square mile, as far as tornadoes, Iowa has the most. It's a small state, 44. A lot of these coastal sites, there are water spouses moving on land that counts as a 20. Get out west, Oregon gets 2 a year. I talked to some of the forecasters out there, there's a panic because they don't see it that often to issue a tornado warning. These are the tracks here. So anything in magenta or I guess pink is EF5. In northern Ohio, the only EF5 was in 1985 across Trumbull County in May of 1985. This storm is actually up here.
Does that have something to do with when they shifted the scale to?
Well, it's F5 or EF5, so they just count it as the same, so they didn't want to go back and, because the scale, the old F scale was in the 300s. And so anything over 260 now, or I think 260 is a EF5. So they had some more engineering and the engineers looked at the wind damage and they kind of changed it up. So Dr. Fujita, he was a scientist in Chicago, University of Chicago, and he developed this scaling of tornado by the type of damage. So there was a structure that's a kind of an apartment building and the tornado came through and wiped it down to the studs. That's significant damage. If it's just doing roof damage, not all tornadoes are the same. You know, so some will cause a lot of damage, some will cause just a little damage. All tornadoes can kill. If you're outside and it has some debris or 2x4 is picked up by EF0, they can do that and hit you upside the head. Yeah, they can kill you. So all tornadoes are dangerous. But most of the storms that we have here are the weak kind. EF0, EF1, mainly. Since I've been here, going on my third year, most of the tornadoes have been EF1s and EF0s. These are the storms that are major or the catastrophic tornadoes. Those are 4s and 5s. Actually, 3s, 4s, and 5s are in there. You can see most of it's on the west side. Here's that long track tornado I was talking about back in the 50s. Just south of Toledo, all the way to Cleveland. Kind of in the center, nothing in Wayne County. We'll look at that. The tornado frequency across, at least across as far as the months. You know, we had a tornado that actually occurred in Minnesota in December that has never happened. That was last year. And I started looking at the records. I didn't have this one up as far as the Skywarn. So I was looking at the records. They actually had 2 tornadoes in December, and that was on the south half of the state. We've never had anything up here. So I've never seen any records of it. Could have happened before we got here, 200 years, 300 years. That could have happened. So you can see where most of the tornadoes occur in May. Kind of, you start getting the situation where you get that warm, moist air kind of getting over the Ohio Valley in the months of April and May, starting in March, could start as early as February. Then once we start getting the infrequent systems or cold fronts coming down in June and July, those numbers go down, but we still get some events. Still kind of high. We really drop off in October. I was told that September and October is our best weather. This past week was false advertising. So I'm still waiting. Although I will say the summers here are delightful. I mean, now if I heard a complaint, it's kind of warm. This is perfect. Look at the jump up in November. That tells me that we're having a second, that's when the cold fronts are coming down and the warm air is retreating. Yes?
On that last slide, where more of the tornadoes are on the west and fewer on the southeast, would that be because of the more mountainous terrain in the southeast?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and some of it has to do with the more mountainous terrain, but over history before that cell phone, a lot of people weren't capturing it. We would get it in newspapers, we'd get newspaper clippings. There was a tornado that hit this location and it was like 2 months ago. So now with the cell phone, everybody has a cell phone, they're gonna take it out and take a picture. So our numbers have been increasing all across the country because of that. But this is mountainous area down in the southeast. It does need to be a little flat, but I don't want to put out the general idea that tornadoes do not strike or do not touch down in mountainous region or in metro areas. Because we've seen it in mountainous region, we've seen it in metro areas. So if there's a watch out, a severe thunderstorm watch or a tornado watch, you want to stay tuned to the weather. Kind of want to keep just keep a general idea of what the weather is. And I know that's kind of hard. There's a lot of things going on, especially with your kids, family and stuff. So, but you want to keep an eye on it. How many of you guys are on Twitter? Anybody? Facebook? So you may see this on Facebook. You see this come across the feed. Unfortunately, I have Twitter. I do it to spy on my kids. But I also do it in alert form that, I have a Twitter account. I'm not putting out anything. But I'm able to see the alerts from different things. So if I want to follow, say for instance, I want to follow the police department, I can actually have a ringer. It tells me what's going on. Anytime we tweet in our office, I can see it. And there's no algorithm that kind of downplay it. So if you're following us on Facebook, severe thunderstorm watch that's issued, you may not even see it on our feed unless you go to it. You want to consider yourself on call. This is for spotters, but at least for yourself, you want to monitor what's going on for your family, for your business. In a warning situation, do not go outside and feel the storms. Yeah, we got videos of storms all over the place. I'm supposed to tell you not to film it. Severe thunderstorm warning, you definitely want to seek shelter in a sturdy building, and also you want to monitor for tornado warnings. Here's this tornado warning that's actually will come out on Twitter, not on Facebook. So we'll get that alert. That alert comes across, and it tells you pretty much the information there. This is just one way of communicating. We communicate by phone. If you're in this polygon, if you're in Tiffin in Seneca County, we issue a tornado warning, your phone will go off. If you don't know where the radio, you'll know where the radio will go off. But a lot of times your phone is attached to your hip. Now most generations have the phone attached to their hip. Young, old, they have it on their hip. They have it in their person. They have it in their purse. Everybody's attached to that phone now.
So is this better than the FEMA app?
The FEMA app, the FEMA app works very well. I can't say one is better than the other. It depends on what your preference is.
Gotcha.
If you like the no other radio, that's fine. We still issue that signal on the no other radio. Social media. Once we send a warning out here, most of the time the TV and broadcast meteorologists are going to broadcast it. They're going to talk about it. Different ways of reaching people. People receive information differently. Tornado warning, definitely you want to go in the basement or interior room. You want to seek or go into your kind of safety position if you're outside. And stay in place until the warning expires. A lot of times it will say the warning here until 7 p.m. So that probably was issued at 6:30. Tells you the information, the tornado, hail, how many people are affected, how many schools, how many hospitals. There's some good in Twitter. When it comes to flood, turn around, don't drown. I don't care if you know the area. Oh, this road is not washed out. You don't know. You don't know that. These people made the same mistake. I'm pretty sure that person thought, I need to get to my location, I need to get to work. If it's a flooding situation, you may want to turn around. how bad can winter be around here? These last 2 winters since I've been here, it haven't been that bad. I lived kind of in the snow belt, got about 80 inches, but they salted the roads pretty good. I mean, it was pretty clear. There was some days that were kind of sketchy, but I would say this, I traded my car and got a Subaru. Because my car was slipping and sliding. It was a rear wheel and the garage is so small, so I had to kind of conform. I got 4-wheel drive and everything. So this gives you an idea. It looks like Wayne County gets about 40 to 50 inches. It's pretty wild. You can see where the snow belt is. Erie, Ashtabula, Geauga, parts of Cuyahoga, northern part of Portage and Summit County, and part of Trumbull as well. Look at that little tick there, just in northern Medina, 80 inches. The airport was located on the west side of town. Used to get about 66. Actually, the new totals came out, those averages went down. So the 80s dropped off. 80s were very snowy. They dropped off, and so the 30-year averages actually lowered most locations by 5 to 10 inches. But when you're getting 80 and it goes out to 75, doesn't really make a difference. So yeah, it's not used to getting a lot of snow, 40 inches. Some winters they get about 20. I can tell you, in the city, they have a problem handling that snow. Now, ODOT does a pretty good job of cleaning those roads out, but when you start getting to those secondary roads, that's when you got a problem. So we're gonna talk about the blizzard of 1978. I was around. Actually, there was 2 events that actually got me into weather. January 1977. That's the first time I saw snow. I grew up in Florida. Not North Florida, South Florida. So I saw snow and I asked my teacher, can I go out and build a snowman? Can't build a snowman with snow flurries? What's going on? Definition of a blizzard: sustained winds of 35 miles per hour and visibility down to a quarter. Doesn't necessarily have to be the snow that's falling, but a little bit of snow to be falling. But blowing snow is the issue, lasting for 3 hours. This had a pressure as low as a Cat 1 hurricane. And the winds were there too, from what I understand. They're rare. We've had a situation where it's been kind of close, maybe 30, but definitely that's probably just a winter storm. If it's a blizzard, that's a whole other ballgame. Infrastructure failures, wires going down, power outages. When in a storm, you just need to keep your butt inside. This one here, you really gotta hunker down and make sure everything is working and make sure you're kind of well stocked. Worst winter storm in Ohio history: 51 deaths and $73 million in agricultural loss. Talk about those structural. I would hate to have a situation where the roof collapsed. But since the snow was blowing, you didn't have that issue, but you had a tree that fell into your house. You had that issue. Roads were closed for days. So I don't want to see that up here. I mean, I've been enjoying the weather so far. I like all the seasons.
We had to get 3.5 foot of snow off the roof, and the roof was 15 feet off the ground.
Oh, I don't know how you do it.
I just crawled up there and started moving it.
So in our new office, we actually highlighted etched in one of our windows. This is the library in the back side, and our operations is on our side. And so they have the surface map that kind of etched it in January 25th, 1978. Ice storms, definitely a pretty bad situation, January 2005. Anything that's, this episode was 3/4 of an inch to an inch. Ohio and Indiana. An ice storm is usually have 1/4 of an inch. So this was a really bad situation here. Costliest event since the blizzard of 1978. Power lines, trees down, definitely very significant damage infrastructure wise. I mean, you're sitting in there in the cold. And followed by heavy rain. So not only that, is everything was sticking, and then heavy rain came, the flooding on the rivers. Temperature's not getting too warm, it's probably in the 30s, but it's a raw rain. It's the type of rain you want to stay in and eat soup. Eat some Italian wedding soup, which is my favorite now. I've been on that kick for almost two years now. No, it's very significant as far as ice storms. Ice storms, we were talking about ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, and they were saying for them to clear out, sleet is a big issue rather than ice storm. As for the roads, ice storms have a problem. Sleet's gonna fall, it's not gonna hang on to tree branches, it's not gonna hang on to wires like a freezing rain, which is ice storm. Ice and snow, take it slow. 70% of ice-related injuries occur in automobiles. So I stay off the road. Unfortunately, the pandemic has kind of forced people to work at home. Now they're not telling us, if you can't make it in, this may be a telework day. The kids can't make it in, the school buses can't make it in, this may be a telework day. There's some good things that come out of it. I'm not sure if the library is the same way, but, if you can't make it in, I'm gonna work from home. It may save your life. Definitely winter weather, river ice jams, they can be unpredictable. And I've seen it firsthand over a million. They don't know when the ice is gonna break, but when it breaks, get out of the way. We have a service hydrologist that handles that. I'm happy I don't have to handle that, but it's very important. I don't have the AHAPS page or the river page that we can monitor the rivers, but I'll pull it up after the show and you can kind of, if you live near a river, you can kind of monitor it. Reporting. Well, say for instance you're out and about and you maybe want to report, hey, I got some quarter-size hail. Who do I report it to? You can report it to your emergency manager. That information will get to us. But you can report it to us. Time, event, tell. Time, event, location, tell. If it's penny size or larger, if you have hail, definitely want to report it. Wind gusts of 50 miles per hour or greater. Any damage, weather damage related, flooding, funnel clouds, and tornadoes. I'm not going to wall clouds, that's this spotter, so I should have taken that out. Reporting it to us officially, if you want to report it, you can use that 1-800 number. That'll get to our office, that'll actually get to our office and you can report it. Please do not use that number or give that number out or use it for fishing reports. Just be careful how you use that number. Social media. Seems like everybody's on social media. You can actually get what we call a DM, direct message, on Facebook or on Twitter. Amateur radios are very, they're still around. We still have some amateur radios that come in and do some reporting. If you want to do the online, you can actually do it on our website. And of course, if you want to do an email, you can email us the pictures. Any kind of pictures you have, hail, stormclay@noaa.gov. We're not very timely with that, like Twitter and Facebook, but we'll get to it within a day. So how many of you guys have visited our website? It's a convoluted mess. I'm not even gonna admit it. You may be used to it, you've been going to it for years. You're used to it. But if a first person is going to it, it is a tool to get through it. Because you want to look, well, where can I find this? Where can I find that? Where can I find this? We go out and we try to say, here's the location where this is going to change, and that link is not going to change in the near future. We hope it's not going to change. So our site has not changed in about 10 years at www.weather.noaa.gov. .gov/Cleveland or CLE. And you'll get the map of our area. If you hit on that map, you'll get wherever you are. You click on Wayne County, you'll get the information for Wayne County. It tells you what's in effect, the forecast, and actually give you a forecast for 7 days. Hazardous weather outlook, that's how we communicate to the emergency managers, but you guys can look at it as well. Kind of get an idea of what's going on for the week, today and tonight, but also give you information, impact weather, not sunny, these are impact weather. Do I need to be alert? Do I need to take a different route? Maybe I don't want to go in that location where there's a low water crossing because there's a flood watch. Make alternative moves. The Storm Prediction Center, they're like the National Hurricane Center. They're a national center that looks for outlook for storms across the United States. That's where our severe thunderstorm watches and tornado watches come from. So the watch comes out first, then the tornado warning comes locally as we issue the warnings if we see a significant imminent danger that's occurring locally. And this is not so much of a mess, but you can kind of look in there and see what today is. Definitely this is probably summertime. Looks like August, no, June. So you can see there's some significant weather that's going on across the Mid-South or Deep South, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, some other activity up near Montana. So anytime you see green, that's general thunderstorms. Anytime the colors go up, definitely that's a situation where we're expecting possible strong to severe storms. So this kind of corresponds to those color codes. General thunderstorms, no severe thunderstorms expected. Most of the times we're in marginal to slight. We've been in enhanced maybe once or twice since I've been here. On that day that we had the Kentucky tornado, they went from a moderate to a high that day. It was a significant long track tornado. Those are little killer tornadoes, those EF4s and EF5s. That'll be on some of the websites there as well. The briefing page, that's for emergency managers, so I'm going to skip over this, but you can go to our briefing page and kind of get an idea if you want to kind of brief yourself. Really into it, yeah, you can do that. It's buried in our page. If you type in NWS space CLE space briefing page, you'll be able to get to it. But I think it's on the websites as well. Social media, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're also on Instagram. I'm on Instagram as well because I have kids. So I'm just waiting to see what's going to happen, see if they haven't gotten on yet. I have a YouTube channel, but I don't know what I'm doing with a YouTube channel. My daughter has a YouTube channel. As long as she don't have her face on there. We have a YouTube channel as well. We don't kind of utilize it. It depends on the staff. I will say this. We have every generation there. We have boomers in our office. We have 2. We have Generation X and millennials. And we're going to cringe the day we have somebody come in our office that's born after 9/11. That has not come to pass yet. I don't know if I'm going to be retired by then or not. But if you want to follow us on social media, those are the different platforms you can follow us. Wireless emergency alert system. Talked about tornadoes. The tornado warning is issued, everybody's phones go on. Flash flood. Definitely that will go off for considerable and catastrophic levels. So I don't know if you've kind of been paying attention to what's going on in Florida. With that Hurricane Ian, as it was dissipating on a weekend, it's putting out a lot of rain. I think Orlando picked up a foot of rain in a kind of a 17-hour period. Kissimmee, south of there, picked up about 15 inches. They issued a flash flood emergency, that's catastrophic levels. Those are the type of flooding where there's rescues going on. The type of flooding in Ida, in New York City, where the subway was flooding. A lot of basements were flooding. These are basements that never flood. But definitely that's the situation that could occur. Snow squalls. You're driving, your phone goes off, then it's the situation you need to get off the road or slow down. Significant severe thunderstorm, those are destructive tags, those are for derechos, like last June, we had come across here. A lot of trees there. Those are equivalent to the EF 0, 80 to 90 mile per hour winds. We'll issue those for severe thunderstorms with destructive tags of 80 mile per hour winds or baseball size hail, 2.75 inches in diameter. And they come across your phone. We had to do that because an event that occurred down in southwest Missouri, and it was kind of I guess these platoon boats. They got the warning, we had the destructive tag, but the company did not do anything. They didn't do any precaution. The boat overturned, 17 people perished. And so we needed to do something with that. Then we had the derecho that occurred probably about 3 or 4 years ago. That kind of sped up the process. We've actually used this 4 times in our office. We had a storm that was over Hudson, a lot of trees that were down on houses, and then the storm that was over Lorraine. This woman, she said that she didn't know what it was, but they went off on her phone, and she went in her basement. Her house had 3 trees in it. Smartphones, smart app or smartphone apps, we do not have an app as of right now. Not sure if that's coming soon, and I've been answering that question for the last 10 years. Everybody say, well, when are you gonna get an app? Well, leadership says we're not gonna get an app. It's up in the air now. We have new leadership, so maybe that's coming. You have the FEMA app, you get all the alerts, and Red Cross, you get all the alerts as well. The problem that we were having with the app is the GPS portion of it. So we were able to do it, it's just the proprietary for the GPS, and that was kind of holding it up. And the leadership probably did not want to go in that direction at the time. No weather radio. I have a no weather radio. I got one for Christmas back in 1970. No, I would say 1979. It's a Radio Shack one. You push down, it talks or whatever. I still have it. Battery, programmable. Now it has the county codes. So if you want to know what's going on upstream, you want to know what's going on in Richland, storms coming in, Ashland coming in, you want to know, hey, is there storms coming in? I can get those alerts on there and program it. It's all at Walmart, Walgreens, different type of stores, hunting stores. They have one for the head, for the hunters to put right on the head. Those are pretty cool too. Tone alerts or any kind of warnings. Especially when it's not in use, almost like the standalone alarm clock that we used to have. So building a vision, society, building the idea of building a weather-ready nation just to make sure that we're ready for the changing weather that's going on. It's kind of a moral layer of protecting life and property, but also preparing for the changes that are coming. Talked about the average 6 hurricanes a year. That may be increasing. This is for the United States. And the Atlantic Basin. 1,300 tornadoes. I think in one of my Skyrun class, they said, do they get tornadoes across the other parts of the country? Other parts of the globe? I mean, no. When they get a tornado, it's probably 1 or 2. Hey, France got a tornado. We get tornadoes, we have families, like a reunion. Sometimes there's 40, sometimes there's 100 of them. And we have these in the spring, they're just rolling out. Last year was kind of quiet. Floods, 5,000 floods. 26,000 severe thunderstorms, droughts and fires. 650 deaths on average, $15 billion in losses, and those numbers are going up. So I'm gonna ask this question before I kind of flash it first, and then what causes the most deaths as far as weather related in the United States? I mean, there's no wrong answer, all of them cause death. Yeah, floods. Floods, yeah, floods.
It'll be electricity, right? Lightning.
Floods is up there,
Heat.
heat. Combination of people, they're more diabetic people, but also just the circulatory system, but just people not taking precaution, or not checking up on the elderly. People not making sure they're not leaving their kids in the car. That's a low number, but that does happen. Those numbers are high every year. Not so in Ohio, but other parts of the country, they're high. Look at cold. It's not cold's not happening in Florida. It's happening in other places. Just exposure, rip currents. People go out to Carolinas, go out to the coast. I know most of Ohio, I'm kind of getting where you go if you want to go to I don't offend anybody who likes to go to Erie to swim, but wants to go to a real beach, they're going to South Carolina. Is that true, I guess? People who want to go to the beach are going to South Carolina. There's a lot of rip currents there. So you see some of the deaths that occur. Lightning, not so much. You remember I got on the men.
Yeah.
Because we've been moving inside. We do most of our work inside. It's not outside, and we're still an agricultural nation. But most of our work is done inside. We moved inside. Now most of the lightning deaths are coming from recreational things. Fishing, golfing, just doing things you have to, need to get inside, So I get on the men for that because most of it is us. We're going out, I'm going fishing, I'll be out there for 6 hours, So I'm going golfing, I get 9 holes in, or 18. That's where it's occurring. I think for Ohio, it's probably going to be flood here. I need to look at the numbers. I don't have one for separate. This is for the United States. This is for 2021. Those numbers were high for flood. But consistently, 10-year, 30-year heat is just outweighing everything. Okay. So this is 2022 so far. June 13th, $1 billion. That was the duration that come across Indiana and Ohio. Most of the events have been up here. I need to update it because I don't think I have August in there yet. Some outbreaks of tornadoes. Remember, some of these outbreaks here are families of storms. Not just one tornado, it's 20. It's 25. The big ones, there's 100. Don't have Ian on there yet. Drought. Drought is ongoing. So this is actually showing the $1 billion disasters, how they rate across. And I'll just, I haven't really dived into this, but it's just showing the parts of month when the actual damages are occurring. And the green, of course, is severe storms. You can see winter storms in the wintertime. Drought, that's because of agriculture. Most of ours is not in fatalities, it's infrastructure, it's damage to property, stuff like that. Flooding, you get flooding in the winter months. The river dam, river ice jam. But definitely drought and severe storms. It depends on the season. I think we went over that already, I think that's a repeat. So just kind of showing the tornadoes from 20 to 2012, showing kind of a repeat, the peak in June and May. I need to look at that to make sure that's for northern Ohio, not just for the state of Ohio, so it's not a repeat. So what it's showing here, the other map, the other graph actually showed for the whole state. This is for northern Ohio. And you can see the numbers. I was talking about December. We haven't had a tornado in December. That's true.
What's your definition of northern Ohio?
Well, north of, I'll say our forecast area, which is north of Columbus and north central and northeast. It's for our forecast area. So I don't include Columbus. It does include Youngstown. And so these are the records to 2012. So it does not include the event that occurred on October 21st of last year, where we had 10 tornadoes in October. So that number's gonna go up to 15. But you can see how the numbers are actually kind of high in May, June, and July, and actually kind of steep down and then peak up for the secondary season in November. This is the time of day when that occurs, from 1950 to 2012. Gives you an idea, it's at 24-hour clock, so midnight is here, and 11 p.m. is over to the right. Most of the time it's occurring around 2 o'clock, 1400 to 6 p.m. Maybe 7 p.m. In the southeast, they have you can kind of see a little bump there. The southeast, they have a lot of nighttime storms. Those are fueled by a lot of warm, moist air, the Gulf of Mexico. Those numbers are surprisingly high at 5 a.m. I don't want to be awakened by a tornado or a tornado warning at 5 a.m. I would rather it occur, never, but I would rather it occur when I can see where I'm going or if I'm awake. That storm that occurred in Kentucky was in the overnight hours. That was a killer tornado, EF4, EF5. Luckily, we don't get that type of storms here frequently. I'll just say that. And I don't know of any storms that were that strong in the overnight hours in the north half of Ohio. This is for last year for our severe weather reports. We go out and do surveys, or we talk to emergency managers, they give us the information and we report it. So last year we had 464 reports across the state of Ohio. 400 reports were wind reports. Hail reports 27, 37 tornadoes. We're kind of up that year. That event that kind of pushed us, to the top was that October 21st last year. 9, 10 tornadoes in one day. What about Wayne County? What's the history like? I looked at the National Climatic Data Center. It actually showed all the way through, that's the year weather across. That's not true. This is for Wayne County. Actually, it showed 23 tornadoes, 10 injuries, no fatalities. Unless someone can tell me wrong, when I looked at my records, I didn't see any. Costliest tornado occurred on September 16, 2010, cost $34 or $35 million again. Does anybody remember that storm?
I saw that storm. I was
Okay.
doing some storm spotting after some of its damage map.
Is that the one I went to the fairgrounds?
No, it's the one
We'll
that
go through.
OARDC.
So it looked like it was south of Worcester and
Yeah, just
lifted just east or just west of, is that Dalton?
down.
Dalton, okay.
I saw that thing just coming from work up in the rain.
We're not sitting alone, we actually talk to emergency managers, we also talk to the media as well. We try to create this triangle of information and make sure that we're kind of relaying the same message. And we want to do that so that you guys will make an educated decision either to move or take shelter or take some action rather than, this person's saying this person's saying that, they're saying this, and what ended up happening, you don't move, you don't act. So we do tabletop exercises with emergency managers, they go through scenarios. We actually connect with some universities. Emergency managers actually kind of building a relationship. Here on the right-hand side, WKYC is a weather nation ambassador. The library can be a weather nation ambassador. And what they do is this information, once you get your email, you'll get information campaigns throughout the year. Sometimes it's national, sometimes it's local. Right now, it's gonna be bombarded with hurricane information. Storm Ready, that's for counties and large entities like businesses, but mostly for counties. And there's some benefits of actually becoming a storm ready community. Wayne County is a storm ready community. They actually may get some breaks in their insurance premium. We're not talking like 50% now. We're talking probably 3 or 5%, but I'm not sure in a certain section of your insurance policy, homeowners insurance policy, and infrastructure policy. So I'm not sure if that's passed on to the homeowners or not. I need to check on that. But we do preparedness. The idea of preparedness is actually to see what may happen so you can react like you have muscle memory to do the right thing. Skywarn, I'm the kind of the Skywarn person here. We do have a weather regulation ambassador, and then we also have a storm ready. So we kind of a 3-tier. We kind of work, I will say we kind of work the public, but we actually try to get the message out and our mission through different ways. If you go to our site, and I think it's on there, we have our fall calendar for Skywarn season. I think there's only 3 this year. Last spring, we had 24 Skywarn classes all across northern Ohio, or north central and northeast Ohio. So that's quite a few, and they were all in person. That's all I have for you guys. Any questions or comments? You can ask me about questions about the travel. I'm not a snow person. I know lake effect snows, and I'll be honest with you, this weekend really surprised me with the lake effect showers that occurred that was continuous for 3 and 4 days, and I did not know that lake effect showers would prompt a flash flood watch. So that is something new to me. Some of the forecasters there say that happens probably once every 7 or 8 years, where it's that heavy and that efficient. My passion has always been hurricanes, but I'll say this, I will take a heavy snowstorm over a hurricane any day. I'm being honest. So, but I'm glad you guys, had me, and I appreciate the time. But I'll open it up for questions. If you guys have any questions, you want to go back to the slide? Yes.
Can you talk about the weather planes that fly through hurricanes?
Yes, so they're like Air Force Hurricane Hunters. And I can actually pull up one. I guess, let's see if there's something in here. I will say this, they don't normally, what they try to do, especially from what I understand, they actually release these drop signs, which are radio signs. So, not our office, but the Cincinnati office, Detroit, and Pittsburgh office release a balloon twice a day. And they have an instrument called a radio sign that's on it, and it goes up in the atmosphere, and it gets the measurements at different layers. So when the Hurricane Hunter plane goes in there, they actually drop down sondes through the storm. They cross in the storm, crisscross in the storm, and they'll drop these sondes to get information about the storm as they kind of move across and crisscross in the storm. From what I understand, the storms that's easier to penetrate are the strong, mature storms. The flow is a lot more uniform. It's very predictable. The storms they do not like to go into is these tropical storms. Those are weaker storms. Those are when, they're not quite hurricanes, they're developing. There's flare-ups of thunderstorm complexes going on in the storm. And so just like a plane, I remember flying on a plane when I was a kid, and most of those guys were World War II pilots. They think they can punch through any type of storm. They have the plane bouncing up and down, and they don't do that now. If you've been on planes, they avoid most storms. Well, these planes are actually going through those storms, and I'm pretty sure they're getting tossed around pretty much. But they do like mature storms. Those are a lot easier to go into and investigate. Remember, when a storm is forming, it's hard to get a fix on where the center of location is. And some of these storms look very disorganized. Early on, Eon is like, it's a very disorganized storm. How are they going to be able to? So that's why they're doing crisscrossing and trying to look for the lowest pressure, look for circulation, wind speeds, and direction to kind of get a kind of a lay of the storm, if you will, and to see what's going on in that storm. So sometimes they have some issues around different countries like Cuba. I won't say they're not our friends, but they want our information, And don't get me wrong, they want our information. So there are some concessions. You can come close, but not go over. It's okay. So the others are usually let us go, and they actually have support. So the Hurricane Center actually do support a lot of the Caribbean islands. They work with Mexico as well. Some areas in Bay Campeche, that's this real southern location in the Gulf of Mexico, they may not go into. And then storms that are way out in the Atlantic, where it's just bothering boats, commerce, large boats, they may just do satellite. They may not send a plane out there. Sometimes those trips can take up to 12 hours, depending on what they're doing. Yes?
I have another question. Like you showed that, picture of the, blizzard of 1978 with the isobars on it.
Okay.
My question's about the isobars. So when the isobars are real close together, why does that mean it's a worse storm?
Well, let me pull up an isobar. I can pull up a map here, and I can actually, you use a current map here to see if I can get to it. So I can give an example of what's going on right now. Hopefully they have it here. So this is another national center called the Weather Prediction Center. I believe it's on your map, on your website. And the isobars, I'm trying to pull up a map that have isobars on it. Think for it, where would it be? Fronts. Okay. So I'm just giving an example of what's going on right now. So we have a high pressure that's right on top of us. And you can see isobars of Hurricane Eon. You see it's really packed in there. Like the blizzard, I can't pull up the blizzard because that map is not a good map, so I'll just show an example. The winds around the counterclockwise around the hurricane, those winds are packed in there, at least the winds. The isobars are packed in. And so what's going on is the pressure is so low, the winds are actually kind of being forced into that low pressure. The pressure is high over Michigan, but it's very broad, so it's kind of spreading out, kind of descending. The air is rising in the low pressure, the air is sinking in a high pressure. Usually high pressure means good weather. Usually high pressure means no clouds, but not if you're downstream of a lake. So in the situation with the 1978, that was a very low pressure storm, and it was over land. And it was as low as a Cat 1 hurricane, so the pressure was very low. And what's happening when those pressures get very low, and I'm trying to describe it in a way that, here's a perfect example. So if you're in a kind of a city, like maybe Chicago or Cleveland, in the downtown area, the wind is blowing through. But if you go between buildings, it's even more windy. And so what's going on is that wind is being forced to constrict into this area. Now, isobars is actually kind of an indication of the winds being constricted into an area. And the closer they are, kind of like those buildings, the faster the wind blows. I don't know if that's a good example of it, but the pressure changes going on there, where it's very low, definitely those isobars are very close, you may get a windy situation, it's gonna be very windy, because it's trying to rush towards that area. I don't know if that answered it.
What is an isobar?
Isobar is equal line of pressure, so if, say for instance, I have, let me show you one thing on here. On the display. Okay, let's see, go back. Okay. So this is a screen, this is kind of a weather box, the old weather box we used to use. And it has a pressure in there. So it's actually, all the stations have a pressure and a measure. It's like a contour, like you're doing for like a mountain. So, and here is showing, this is like different pressure lines on here. It's a different contour, kind of in between pressure. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. The ones that are in the same pressure are going to be in the same line. If you go north of the line, the pressure, depending on if that's a low pressure, say if that's a low pressure, it's over Montana, it's going to be lower. If you go away from that pressure, it's going to be higher. So, like I was showing the high pressure, I'm jumping around here, but I want to show the instrument. So there are actual different locations that's measuring the pressure. And so in Ohio and Michigan, we're under high pressure. They have little numbers where they have these, where they have the measurement, and all you're doing is contouring the location of the high pressure. When you get to a low pressure, those measurements are lower pressure, and so you're kind of contouring around those low pressures. So if you think of a 3D map, the high pressure is showing higher, like an elevation, kind of the same way, and a low pressure is showing a lower, like a trough, ridge, kind of like where you're kind of walking or hiking, kind of the same way. This map can at times, when you have the raw data on top of there, it can look very busy. And so the forecasters, what you were seeing back in 1926, that picture, they were actually analyzing those maps. They were having pressure from different locations, not only pressure, they were looking at temperature, wind speed, and dew points or measurements of measurements of moisture. and they analyze those maps. And so the map that I was showing you, they pull all that data out, and all you have is just the isobars, which is the measurements of pressure, same pressure. They may have isotherms, which are temperatures, the same temperatures. They may have, there are different ISOs for every measurements, yes.
Just for a question on something else, but I was curious, when did you have your aha moment that you wanted to be what you are?
Oh. So it happens over time, kind of shifts, sometimes things get boring. But I think I was in, like I said, I was January 1977, it snowed. And I was in the second grade, so you do the math.
Okay.
That was when it fascinated me, but I didn't know it was a thing. But Hurricane David is when my family boarded up the house, everybody was
So you're
boarded up.
living through one of them?
Yeah, living through one. And actually that hurricane did not affect us. It affected, I think, Puerto Rico, and it kind of crushed us. Our power was out for a couple of days, not too much damage there. But I just like weather. And if you talk to any of the meteorologists at the National Weather Service, they'll tell you the same thing. It started at an early age. And so, people, eventually they'll probably go back to what they want, eventually. When I got into my career, there's different ways you can go. When you kind of go into it, people call you, oh, there's weather Fred, and you think you're like, oh, yeah. But we have guys that are very smart in my office. So competition is stiff, so you go in a different direction. Or maybe you pick up another skill, talking to people one-on-one. I think my fear is going into a Walmart or a department store or something like that and hearing somebody saying, well, the storm struck without warning. I definitely don't want it. It's like chalk, because we do so much work in trying to get to the public in different ways. And so I heard, well, the water came in so fast, they were talking about storm surge for 5 days straight. They were. And if you look at that forecast from when it was southwest of Jamaica, that was 5 days out. If you were in Fort Myers and you saw that, then why didn't you evacuate? And I know the reason why. There's some, reasons. The reason why a lot of people don't evacuate. If I want to lose my house, I want to see it float away. You can't do anything about it. What are you going to do? Water come in, you can. But I get it, because it is hard to leave an object. And I work with people that lost everything in Katrina. And it's heartbreaking. But they have their life. They lost their wedding pictures, they lost everything. And I still in contact with one young lady. She lost her dog, and then she comes to, a lot of people come to work and they kind of use it as a refuge. And she sees people with dogs and cats there, and she lost her dog, and she was so upset. And she thought she could have brought her dog. So what are you gonna do? You have to go home and send your dog home. And she saw, there was like 3 or 4 people with their dogs and cats. And she was upset. The older we get, the more we don't like the routine and change. And so there was a young man that was there, his father was a World War II vet, retired fire department, did not want to move, did not want to, I'm not moving, I'm staying right here. His house took him 18 feet of water, but the guy did go with his son and they evacuated. We didn't know where he was for almost, 20 hours. It is hard for us as older person, the older you get, I'm saying here, nothing's gonna take me away from my kingdom, this is my castle. So it's hard, and we realize that. And the thing about the hurricanes is they move around to different areas. You don't have a second time to do it. Next time, I'm not gonna stay around. Southwest Florida, the last time they had a storm was Charlie, which was in 2004. That's a long time. So the forecast is getting much better, but the reference of a person that lives in a location, they may not know that they're going off of old, what they thought happened in 1979, 1984. The technology has gotten so much better as far as the forecast of hurricanes. Winter storms as well. Maybe some areas may be a little bit gray here, maybe we missed it by 3 or 4 inches or 5 inches. You know, I was talking last week, we were talking about the event that we thought was gonna occur last week. We had a slight risk out last Wednesday. We had storms break out in Michigan. It messed everything up, and we didn't have anything here. I think we had a couple of storms and that was it. We had a slight risk, we were advertising it, it's, you know, it's gonna have storms and everything. It didn't happen. Sometimes it happens like that. But more than likely, we're hitting it more than missing it. So hopefully we're gaining that confidence and people are kind of maintaining that trust in us. Because the forecast has gotten better. And over my 30-year period, we were not forecasting winds beyond 36 hours. We forecast winds up to 7 days. It may not, 7-day forecast for the wind may not be that low. But a 5-day forecast of showing that you could be impacted by a hurricane, that's pretty good. I think so. That's all I have. I don't know if anybody has more questions. Now those, I tried to highlight as many, it's been a while since I looked at this for the presentation. And there's some mistake in here. I do have information about the flood, 1913, the dust storm, D-Day forecast. So you have that, tornado tracks, you can look up tornado tracks if you want to look that up. Also the information about the blizzard. So all that information is on there, the Department of Commerce. Try to cover as much as I can. Most of the information here should be in the page. I don't have a reference page. I'm not that good. I'm not that good. So, but I tried to cover, okay, I want to see what D-Day was in, let's see what the forecast. You're able to look at that, see what decisions they made. The office history is in there. So there's a lot of information in there. And of course, there's the social media if you want to get on social media. I'm not forcing you or anything like that, I understand. But definitely there's a lot of information on here, so you can use that. I emailed it to Doug, so I don't know if you ask Doug, hey, I don't want the paper copy, I just want to click on it. It's a PDF, you can actually go to it, just click on that. So instead of typing, so some of these websites are long. So that's why I emailed it to them. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.